Not just they can do that on our airwaves, but that they can do that as one of us, as badge-carrying employees, as paid contributors to our sacred airwaves.
Welcome to the DJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
John, excuse me for a minute while I genuflect, because these are our sacred airwaves.
Our sacred airwaves.
Our
Brad.
sacred airwaves. Not just airwaves, but sacred airwaves. And
To which direction do you genuflect, Brad? Do you go east toward actress Tishaura Jones? Do you go west toward the home of the Chiefs, which is Kansas? Or what direction do you face?
straight up to Tracy Ellis.
Oh, Brad, we're only 9 seconds in and we did it.
John, good morning. That is John Combest, Combest.
Brad.
I spell his name because of the fact you need to type into your computer JOHNCOMBEST.com. And when you hit that magic button and the page starts to load, you will be privy to all of the top stories in the state of Missouri, be they political, governmental, sometimes just plain funny, weird stuff. But most of the time, John has his finger on the pulse of what goes on in the entire St. Louis area, and obviously our side of the state, and St. Charles County, Franklin County, Warren County, the counties that we love and admire most, because everybody wants to move here and everybody wants to leave the city of St. Louis. But that's a whole other story. Okay, John, are you ready?
I'm ready.
We'll start it off with this guy who comes in the studio every morning and he gets a huge paycheck and he says a few words and he says things like,
And here they are. In third place,
Brad, you're going to get your wish. And I don't mean Raquel Welch coming to your house on Claudine in 1972. I mean Bill Eigel. It appears has raised enough money to go up on television around the state, Brad.
Really?
Scott Fawn has the story. He does a weekly update of what's happening in the Missouri governor's race. And I'll also point to yesterday, Pete Mundo's show. Bill Eigel was on and was debuting his first major TV commercial that's getting some airplay, Brad. He tells the Washington establishment and the swamp to get bent. Now you say, John, I thought Eigel was having some trouble raising money, especially compared to Kehoe. Well, you're right, he was. But Scott Fawn details in his latest column the contributions that each governor candidate got over $5,000 this past week. Brad, in contributions over $5,000 this week, Bill Eigel raised $445,000. Most of that money coming from trial lawyers, it appears. Mike Kehoe raised $321,000, and Jay Ashcroft raised $35,855.
well, you know what?
So the takeaway from this, Brad, is that for a long time, a lot of prognosticators, and I would put folks like Scott Fawn in that category, and a lot of other folks commentating on this race have talked about the fact that Eigel has a really strong message, but unless you have the money to get that out, it's limited to your social media following and the people that you meet at parades and fairs and meetings. But it looks like, Eigel's up on TV, at least in Kansas City. I'm not sure exactly where else his ad buy is across the state. So good news if you're the Eigel campaign and you saw the number of undecided voters that the latest round of polls has among Republican primary voters. You're encouraged by that. It's a lot of what Bill Eigel talked about when he was on with Pete Mundo yesterday. So both of those key links are up on the website today, Brad.
And you know what the sad part of that is?
What's that, Brad?
No radio.
How do you know?
Because he's not on our station. And
Is he on other stations?
Well, no. Here's the crazy thing. Okay, once again, these candidates are living in in the previous century when, and I remember Mark Cox talking about this in 97.1. Back in the day, he came to St. Louis. I think he came to St. Louis in 94 or something like that. Okay, and this is sort of hard numbers to comprehend, but you have in radio and TV, you have two numbers. You have what's called your rating and your share. and your share is, imagine, like, let's say channel 5 o'clock newscast. Oh, the share is all the homes that are using TV. How many people are tuned to Channel 4? How many people are tuned to Channel 5? How many people are tuned to Channel 2? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Your rating is the number of people who are in the entire St. Louis metro area and what percentage of those are actually watching TV. Back in the day, Channel 4 used to do like 14, 15, 16 ratings. They're down to like the 1s and 2s. So in other words, what's happened is very few people are watching local television anymore because people have cut the cord, and now that, especially since people have cut the cable, they don't even have the local channels anymore. They have all the streaming channels. They don't have any of the local channels anymore. So once again, these politicians think, oh my God, we got to get on television, and their dollar. The example would be that what you could buy for today. If you go 30 years ago, what would have been like, let's say, a $100 TV commercial, that would have been cheap. Today, it should be $10, maybe even $5, because of the fact that that's representative of the number of people watching television. But yet, no, all these politicians got to say, oh, we got to be on TV. What a waste of money. What a waste of money.
Well, so Brad, let me ask you this then. So we've seen that Jay Ashcroft started. I think everybody, including Jay's campaign, would point out that he started with a large advantage in this race in terms of name ID, and he was polling really well. And Mike Kehoe has largely closed that gap in the last couple months, and Mike Kehoe has done a deluge of television. We talked about it even yesterday on the show. If it's not TV, what is it?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly what it is. And you're going to laugh when I tell you this. I tell you how Bill Eigel could be the governor. Okay, here's what he needs to do. He needs to go to Cabela's. He needs to buy a couple of ARs, like a couple bandoliers, a couple Glocks, one in each hip, and he needs to show up in downtown St. Louis, and he needs to say, I'm Bill Eigel, and I, the new sheriff in town, I'm cleaning up this mess. And once I get done here in St. Louis, I'm jumping on I-70, which is going to be 6 lanes soon, and I'm traveling to Kansas City, and I'm cleaning up that mess. And I am going to stamp out crime in both Kansas City and St. Louis. When I get done, there will be people, there will be families coming down to have picnics in the center median of Market. It'll be so safe, and it'll be so wonderful. And all he needs to do is do like a couple different social media posts, and instantly he will be on every television in the country. People going like, oh my God, look at this nutbag from Missouri. He's running for governor. He's got 2 ARs, 2 Glocks. He's got a bandolier. He's cleaning up crime in St. Louis. And he will get all, and you know this, from a big comms guy, there's 2 kinds of media. There's paid and there's earned. He doesn't have to pay any money for this. It'll be earned media. He'll be everywhere. So
I can't believe he spent years ignoring your phone calls, Brad, with advice like that. Secondly, I think that's a great lead-in to number 2. And third, we're going to agree to disagree about the fact of the value of these TV ads, that Mike Kehoe has had a deluge of ads. It's helped him close the gap. Mike Kehoe hasn't closed the gap because he's been endorsed by the Missouri Spearfishing Association. He's closed the gap because he's dumped a ton of money onto television, and that has helped him close the gap.
John,
so maybe you and I just disagree on that.
Have you ever voted for anybody because they were endorsed by somebody else? Have you ever in your life?
I can't think I have. Yeah.
Well,
so that underscores my point.
What good does I'm endorsed by so and so? Who cares?
You and I should have as we get closer to the primary. I think there are some wacky endorsements that just don't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. And as we go forward, Brad, we have 6 weeks, just under 6 weeks until the August primaries. We should talk about some of these endorsements. You bring up a great point, though, Brad, about Bill Eigel and city crime. That leads nicely into story number 2.
Well, here, let me say one other thing. Okay,
sure.
If Bill Eigel was smart, you know what he'd do? Not only would he show up in the streets,
what would he do? He wouldn't run for governor.
Not only would he show up in the streets of St. Louis with his AR-15s, his Glock 17s, 1 in each hip, his bandolier of .223 ammo around his neck, he would also stand right there in the median on Market Street and say, "Not only am I cleaning up St. Louis, AOC has endorsed me." And immediately,
you know what? Because that is guaranteed to win you your primary election.
okay, no,
We saw that yesterday.
No,
that and pulling fire alarms is the foolproof way to get elected, Brad.
I'm not saying he would win. I'm just saying don't pay for TV when you can get it for free. Okay, here's number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Violence over the weekend in St. Louis City. Did you see the news about this mass shooting that happened late night Saturday, Brad?
And the bizarre, weird interview on Channel 5 with Tishaura Jones. I mean, did you watch that?
I have a link to it up today, Brad. So I didn't watch the interview. I read the story, which is essentially the transcript, plus, of course, some key gun control. Let me run through this real quick, and then I want to hear what your impressions are of actually watching the interview, because I didn't watch the interview. But Tishaura Jones says that essentially her verbatim quote is that the blood is on the state's hands, Brad, because according to her, state law, which protects the Second Amendment, and I think you could say that we have pro-gun legislators in Jeff City, the blood is on their hands because of this St. Louis City violence, and state legislators and our state leaders, our statewide leaders, are responsible for this bloodshed, Brad. Tell me what you thought of the interview.
Well, first off, here it was bizarre. She goes in this thing about cognitive. What did she
behavioral therapy?
I'm
yeah.
going like,
and by the way, cognitive behavioral therapy has a 100% success rate in getting Tyrone from joining the Kia Boys. It's proven. Tyrese, his little cousin Tyrese,
right,
also didn't join the Kia Boys because of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. I'm bad at names, and this is a terrible thing to admit, and you always reel me in. Okay, once again, I'm listening to 97.1 yesterday with Mark Reardon. He has the former county police chief on who is now running for state.
Is it Tim Fitch?
Yeah, Tim Fitch. Okay, here's what's interesting. Here's what Tim Fitch said. Tim Fitch said the city, and I do remember this, I think they did it last year, the city passed an ordinance that on gun control that you cannot walk down the street because we have these goofy constitutional carry and open carry and stuff like that. The city passed an ordinance that you cannot walk down a street and open carry in the city of St. Louis unless you have a concealed carry permit. Okay? So that means anytime the police drive down the street and they see Joe Gangbanger, waving around his AR-15, they can get out of their squad car and say, dude, where's your concealed carry permit? And he obviously doesn't have one. And they put him in handcuffs, they take him downtown, and they book him. Okay? You know what Tim Fitch said? You know how many times that law has been used in the city of St. Louis?
0.0.
That's what he said. He said they've never arrested anybody in the city of St. Louis. So here's Tishaura saying that the blood is on the hands of the regulators in Jefferson City, whatever she said. But yet they passed this rule in the city of St. Louis. And once again, Andrew Bailey, by the way, there was a triple play of Andrew Bailey yesterday on 97.1, which is sort of interesting. Okay, anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. He's never come after her and said, well, Tishaura, you can't do that. It's not being enforced. And Tim Fitch said, you know why?
What'd he say?
There's not enough police.
Oh, yeah.
Because if they tripled the number of police on the streets, they could be arresting dozens of people every single shift. Because, you see it on TV. Matter of fact, I watch all these crazy YouTube videos. Okay, there are two or three guys who are grinding out shorts on YouTube, and it's all about the city of St. Louis and crime. And I have to tell you, you watch those videos, if somebody's sitting in Minneapolis or San Diego or Indianapolis, and they watch those videos, they go like, you know what, let me look at the map. Not only do I not want to go to St. Louis, let me figure out how I can drive around St. Louis and not go through St. Louis, even on the interstates. It's crazy time.
Well, hey, we saw what happened to Chevy Chase in Vacation when he drove through St. Louis. And also, Brad, now, you're right. I think you're right on that piece of Tishaura Jones, and she's kind of, I think it's fair to say she's shifting the blame here. She did say, I have a link up today, Mark Maxwell pointed out in her private text messages, that she talked about how Chicago's gun control laws don't work So I have a helpful link up to that today on johncombas.com. However, Brad, I think you're neglecting the most important news and one of the things of the city's turnaround, and that is that Mayor Tishaura Jones will appear at the Muny over the weekend. Brad, did you see this?
You know what? I saw this and I thought to myself, man, it just gets frustrating me, John. I mean, the interesting thing about this is that you see it. I'm going to make a crazy, weird connection between two people, okay?
Okay.
Tishaura Jones and Dr. Fauci, okay? You know what
okay.
Do you know what the connection is?
Schmutz.
No, not schmutz. You remember that. You didn't know what that was. The connection is once they get into these positions of power, their head explodes and they can't get through the door frame, okay? Remember, Dr. Fauci was everywhere. And to the point, I remember reading a story about some guy who was a very high-level, podcaster talking about the fact that Dr. Fauci, when the whole thing was going on, he was on podcasts that had 6 subscribers. And in other words, he would never turn down an interview. Remember, they had a spread in one of the magazines, Dr. Fauci at home, and he's at his pool, and he's in his swim trunks, and here's Dr. Fauci with his wife, and here's Dr. Fauci with his dog. And he became a star, and he ate it up. Tishaura Jones has the same issue. She's become a star and she can't get away from being in the limelight. When what she should be doing is she should be doing ride-alongs with the police on third shift. She should be out there at 2 o'clock in the morning riding with cops, talking to them and asking them, okay, you got your boots on the ground, literally, tell me how we can clean this city up. But yet, would that ever happen? No, of course not.
Yeah, but she can't do that time slot because I think a lot of the rehearsal for Dreamgirls at the Muny is going late, Brad. Also, let's not forget there's a long history of this. Remember Mayor Lyda Cruson, she had a starring role in Evita. She was fantastic in that. And, Mayor Francis Slay, he was Henry Higgins. He played a terrific Henry Higgins. So, I mean, it's kind of wrong for us to criticize Tishaura for that. Well, Brad, I think you need some cognitive behavioral therapy.
I've been asked to be the guest DJ at one of the strip clubs over in Sauget. I mean, is that like the same kind of prominence? I guess you could say.
When you talk about going across the river and leaving Missouri, Brad, it leads nicely into story number 1,
which is right here.
The number 1.
Oh, a moving story, Brad. And we finally have some good news. You and I can kind of be cranky curmudgeons on occasion on this show. And I can wrap this up quickly. I know we're up against break. But 2 pieces on my website today, one from St. Louis Public Radio, one from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, about a restaurateur, perhaps a raconteur, who is leaving the state of Missouri, Brad. He is throwing in the towel. He's already shut down his restaurant, and he's getting the heck out of Missouri. And you know who's to blame, Brad?
It's Andrew Bailey and the people in Jefferson City. That's who it is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you read this?
I saw this. I thought to myself,
yeah, this is great. So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll finish real quickly. He's leaving the state of Missouri because of Andrew Bailey's position on the whole child mutilation center at Washington University, all the transgender stuff. And he is going to show Andrew Bailey and the rest of the people in Missouri who's boss. He's going to make them the bottom, so to speak. And he is leaving the state of Missouri because he's so angry about this. And, I can't speak for you, Brad, but, I like Will Scharf a lot. Will Scharf was on Annie Fry yesterday, by the way. I have a link up to that today. But I got to say, for Andrew Bailey to be able to help convince LGBTQIA activists to leave Missouri, I think is a feather in Andrew Bailey's cap. I'm sure Andrew Bailey cares and gives one flying F about it. But, I think it's good for Andrew Bailey.
Okay, I read that article and I thought to myself, okay, let me try to connect the dots. And you know what? I couldn't because it didn't make any sense to me. I'm going like, okay, he's upset at Jefferson City, so he's going to close down a successful restaurant, okay?
But this is the way, Brad. I think that's the way, Brad. The way you show us conservatives in Missouri who's boss, leave Missouri. That's the best thing to do. I mean, I feel like I took a loss in this, Brad. Like as a conservative and a right-winger, I think the best way for these gay activists to show us who's boss is just to leave.
And that was my favorite restaurant. I ate there 7 nights a week.
I know it's down by the, and I had to look up where Grand Center is because, I generally don't drive down to Beirut, but apparently it's around the Fox.
Do you know what? A lot of times you and I use the reference to Beirut. I saw a video the other day of I don't know why I was watching this, and it was a video of downtown Beirut. I'm thinking to myself, that looks better than downtown St. Louis. I mean, it looked really nice. I'm going like, that's not what I thought Beirut looked like. And I'm going like, okay, look at that. Those are nice buildings. There's nice streets. There's nice cars. There's people walking around. I mean, that's better than downtown St. Louis.
Yeah, but you know what? They don't have those pack of roving Asian females always causing trouble late on Saturday night. There's shootings. There's everything, Brad.
I guess.
What do you expect kids to do on a study break at WashU if Panda Express is closed? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Also, remind me to tell the story of Tim Fitch, which is sort of interesting as well too. He also made a comment about WashU. Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?